So 2 days after Michael Smerconish goes on his anti-teacher rant and has on an anti-teacher expert who is the head of an organization funded by school privatization, union busting advocates like the Waltons, Charles Koch, and Bill Gates, CNN has on a teacher. Let's take a look at this interview with the teacher.
It is day 4 of no school for more than 330,000 children in Chicago, the nation's third largest school district. The city officials continue to battle with the teachers union over COVID safety protocols. Hallie Quesada is a third-grade teacher in the Chicago Public School District. She's a member of the teachers union. She's also the mother of a student in the system. Hallie, thank you so much for being with me this afternoon. I want to start here with the feelings of a parent of a student there, like yourself, in the Chicago public school system. Listen to this.
We saw over the holiday break, we saw our teachers going on vacations and visiting families, and they absolutely should be doing that. But to return to school 3 days later and say that they don't feel comfortable being in the classroom when the public health community says it's safe, and the rates within the community of kids is lower than what they face when they go to the grocery store or when they get their nails done or when.
Oh my God. I mean, this really does show you. Look, even this, they have a teacher on and they right away cut to a long form clip with a parent who's clearly anti-teacher. Oh, they went out and they went to their school. They went to their family holidays. They saw their family for Christmas and have the nerve to not want to come back to school during the pandemic. There wasn't a spike then, like we saw immediately following the Christmas holiday. There just wasn't. There wasn't. And right away she goes to, oh, we see them at the grocery store shopping and we're getting their nails done. This is the type of person we're talking about here. Literally, this is who we're talking about here. It's the same type of person who demanded for the lockdowns to end when there were lockdowns in April 2020. They took to the streets and the news covered it as, oh, working people are demanding to go back to their jobs. And then you actually went down to one of those lockdown protests and you interviewed them and they were like, I want to get a haircut, God damn it. Get back to work so you can cut my hair. I mean, this is the equivalent of that. The type of person who thinks teachers are just out there getting their nails done at the salon right now. Give me a break.
They're out in just the general community living their lives. You know, we have to move on. We have to live our lives with this pandemic. And so we really want the teachers to get back to work.
The I don't even know, man. The privilege, the get back to work. I want the teachers to get back to work. Imagine saying that. Look at the background on her too. How many of those dangling lights? That doesn't look very cheap. Unbelievable. Is just a lamp not fancy enough for you, lady? Back to work. You have to live with the pandemic. Again, from someone remote calling into CNN. Why didn't she go to the CNN offices? Why didn't she go to the local TV studio? Why is she remote calling in? Like, Ice Borer in the Twitch chat, that says that's just how you talk to the help. Right. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Imagine saying that shit and thinking nothing is wrong with it. Stunning. Stunning. And I will say this. I don't know if they knew in advance. I'm going to assume they didn't. But the teacher they got, this woman that they're speaking to after this clip, she is fantastic. She is great. You can tell that she's a very good teacher. She has that tone, that patience, that you can tell she's used to talking to children, and it's just when you speak to a teacher, especially a good teacher. Let's continue this clip.
What's your response to that?
Yeah, ultimately, I would say we are in a spike. There was a lot of holiday travel. A lot of teachers were quarantining, like myself, but we need to respond to that, to that spike that we're seeing in COVID. 20% of the COVID cases in school since the start of the pandemic showed up in school buildings that Monday and Tuesday that teachers did go back. And the real heart of the instability here is that I think everybody knew at some point we would have a COVID variant that was more contagious. And the city of Chicago failed to have a plan that we could switch to when we got to that point. What's most enraging to me as a parent and a teacher is knowing that the Chicago Teachers Union has been pushing to have a plan for this exact scenario since August, to hear that our governor has been trying to support Mayor Lori Lightfoot behind the scenes for weeks with the very demands that teachers are asking, which isn't a lot. We want increased access to tests and vaccines and masks for our students. We are in uncharted territory right now. We are in a spike. We're not asking for remote learning forever. We are asking for remote learning until these cases get under control.
Well, let me say this. There are other school districts that are chartering this territory. New York schools are open, and they take a school-by-school approach to this. You told one of my producers that the idea that you could do anything school by school without district-wide plan to invest more in schools with least resources is inhumane. What do you mean by that?
It is. Here in Chicago, our resources are so stratified. We've had systemic disinvestment in specific communities. And there are communities that are carrying the brunt of the economic impact of COVID, the brunt of the health impacts of COVID, schools that are just dealing with mass grief. And there also are schools that we see are least vaccinated and have the fewest percentages of kids signing up for tests. And that's not because their families don't care. Those are policy errors. That's a lack of organization and care on the part of planning.
So let me ask you this. The World Health Organization tells us that the most likely transmission in schools is from adult to adult. It's from teacher to teacher, staff member to staff member. 95% of the teachers in Chicago public schools are vaccinated. They also tell us that, quote, opening schools generally does not significantly increase community transmission. So with those two facts from the World Health Organization, again, why can't teachers in Chicago do what teachers in Baltimore, in Philly, in New York are doing?
Yeah, and I'll say the teachers in those other major school districts are saying the same things we are. We see the data that's not collected to start with. And second, it's it's hard to quantify. So I am a teacher who was vaccinated and had a breakthrough case of COVID, and my vaccinated husband ended up hospitalized. And while he survived, it was just wildly traumatic to my family. And having lived that and asking me to subject my students and their families who are even more vulnerable, it feels wrong, especially when there are very basic steps we are asking the district for, like adequate masking for our students, recommended, the vaccines and the testing.
All right, Hallie Quesada.
Hallie was fantastic. And she basically laid it out in the end there perfectly. I mean, the whole thing was great, but the perfect response to this question. Her husband, who was vaccinated, had a breakthrough case and was hospitalized. And that must have been very traumatic for her COVID kid, right? As Michael Smerconish called it in that previous segment. Remember, she's a parent. She's got kids who are home from school right now in Chicago. What do you think was more traumatic to her child? Being home from school for an extra week? Or that child's father, Hallie's husband, going to the hospital because he got COVID. I mean, really now. It just boggles the mind. And kudos to this host, I guess. I don't know, or whoever booked Hallie, because she was great. It's unfortunate that she wasn't immediately on air after Michael Smerconish's multiple segments on Saturday on the issue. I don't know how many more people watch CNN on a Saturday morning than on when was this again? 2 days later? Than on a Monday morning. I'm going to assume probably more watch it on a Saturday morning, unfortunately. But she was great. And she should have immediately been the response to any of these other people that CNN had on bashing teachers, including their own host. Unbelievable. 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 No, the idea is, that kids don't get it. What about all the adults that work in the schools? And what about the kids who don't get sick but get it and then bring it home to their parents or their grandparents? Especially, you know why I'm gonna, and I can't say this is directly from schools, because I don't have the data, and I'm all about that. But you know why minority families have been most impacted during the pandemic? There's a number of reasons, but one major reason among Latino and Black families, especially Latino families for this specific case, is that you have multiple generations living under one roof. In the early days here in New York City, you saw heavy Latino populated districts in Queens especially decimated by COVID. Like Jackson Heights and Corona. Because these are majority Latino populated areas, and oftentimes in those families, in that culture, you have children living with their parents, living with their grandparents, living with elderly aunts, uncles, etc., multi-generations. And so the kid goes out, gets it, comes home, maybe the kid's not sick, passes it on to the parent, maybe not even the parent gets sick, but then passes it on to grandma or grandpa and they get really sick. And of course, I love how, the statistics say that most kids don't get sick, but we're not going to worry about that percentage that actually do, right? There is statistical anomaly. There's not real kids, real people behind those numbers, right? Ridiculous. As you watch these CNN segments that I just showed for you, and you have these school privatization organizations and these union busting groups backed by billionaires, and you have these CNN anchors, and you have these privileged parents literally demanding teachers go back to school, and that they're the only ones worried because we all know kids want to go back to school so bad, and they don't care about any of this, and they're home and they hate it, and they're committing suicide because they hate that they're home and they want to go back to school. As you hear all this shit that they're throwing at you, just take a look at what's coming out just this past couple of days. Right here, you have today, hundreds of kids walked out of Brooklyn Tech to protest the continuation of in-person school during the Omicron wave and to call for a remote option. You have high school students literally walking out in support of teachers, really, and in support of themselves, saying that the schools are not doing enough to protect them and the people who work at their school. And then on top of that, this is in New York City. Let's move over to the other side of the country. Oakland students have started a petition demanding increased testing, KN95 masks for everyone, and outdoor eating areas at every school, or switch to remote learning. If demands are not met, students say they'll go on strike beginning January 18th. If you click this Google Doc link, you see a long list of all these students who signed it. I'm not gonna click through it. I'm not gonna dox anybody, especially young kids in high school. But here you have students themselves. This is the group that apparently is unaffected by COVID. These are the COVID kids, Michael Smerconish said. The kids who were demanding to go back to school so they could go to graduation and prom and hang out with their friends in the class. These are those kids, according to Michael Smerconish, demanding to go back to school, saying schools are not safe because the schools did not properly set themselves up for these COVID spikes that we are now seeing. And if something isn't done, then we're going to walk out. Good for these kids, good for these students, good for these teachers. Nobody knows what's going on in this school better than in any of these schools, better than the people who are there every single day. And here you have students and teachers walking out or speaking out and standing up and saying, we can't deal with the situation we are being put in. And then you have all these people who don't step into that school building every single day or at all, really, saying the opposite. Which ones are you going to believe and trust?